Hello, and welcome to another wonderful Wednesday webinar for the Climate Emergency Centre Network. We're here this week with Andy O'Brien, who is a co-founder of Bristol Energy Co-op, who I believe been going since about 2011 and have been creating community energy and renewable energy in many different locations all around the Greater Bristol area, and really pioneering, and great to see a cooperative movement for renewables. We'd love to see more renewable energy being promoted through all the different 28 climate emergency centres. So over to Andy. Tell us more about your journey. Thank you so much for coming. Over.
Great. Thanks very much, Phoenix. It's really nice to be here. Hello, everybody. My name's Andy O'Brien. I'm a co-founder and director of Bristol Energy Cooperative. I've got some slides for you, so I'll start sharing those.
Right.
Okay, can you see that okay?
Yep.
I'll just try and make it full screen, but sometimes it seems to do funny things in Zoom. Let's see if it works. Can you still see it?
Yep, we can see that. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Works today. Okay. Yeah, so community energy. It is something of a hidden gem, really. As a co-op, we actually did a survey through Ipsos Mori a few months ago to ask the general public if they knew about community energy, and only 1% did. So it certainly isn't something that most people know about, but once they do know about it, they really empathize with it, because it's such a nice thing. It's something they can get involved with in their own locality. It's something they can get hands-on with, and so yeah, it's a really good thing to get involved with. So how did it all start off? Well, we actually started up in 2011. That's when we were formed technically as a community benefit society. That's what we are technically, which means we exist to provide a benefit to the community, and that is through what we do with our energy work. And we were all volunteers. I think there were 6 of us on the initial steering group, and we were lucky that Batham West Community Energy up the road had been in existence for maybe a year, 18 months before us, so we were able to sort of copy a lot of what they've been doing. And we decided that we'd start off with some solar on a roof, because it was probably the easiest sort of thing for us to be able to do. And so we ran a share offer looking to raise £88,000 to put solar on two rooftop schemes. We had no idea how it would go, but in fact it went well, and we actually raised a bit more than that, and we're able to do 3 rooftop schemes. So that's how it sort of started off, and then ever since then it's been really something of a roller coaster, really, because of the government's support or lack of for community energy. There was more support for us when we started off, but that dropped off sort of around the time of the Cameron government, and ever since then really the sector's been very poorly supported, and it's struggled because of that. But I think it's in a very strong place now to actually to grow, because of the sheer number of people that were involved and the skills involved. So yeah, that's what we did in 2012, and I suppose this was our sort of our guiding force, really. If we want a different future, then we'll need to try and create it. And like I say, we're all volunteers. I mean, my background was I had a background in teaching and IT. I wasn't an electricity or an energy person at all, but for years I've been a member of Global Justice Now. And they started talking about climate change, and that's how I first got involved, really. So yeah, we got going, and like I say, we've slogged away for 13 years now, and this is a sort of bit of a picture of where we're up to now. That was a rooftop solar installation that we did, in 2022. That's actually a 1 megawatt solar installation on the roofs of Bottle Yard Film Studios in Bristol. It's owned by Bristol City Council, the building, and yeah, they let us install on that roof. So that just sort of shows what you can do when it's all working together and you've got good partners to work with. You can actually do some really big stuff. So yeah, that's something we did there. And then to give you a bit more of an overview of what we've been doing, yeah, in those sort of 10 years or 13 years. So we're actually one of around 400 community energy groups across the country. Most of them are still volunteer based. I'd say maybe, I don't know exactly, but maybe a quarter now have got to the point where maybe they have one person paid, something like that. And there are probably 20 or 30 groups, a little bit like us, who have been around for really quite a long time, who are really quite well organized now and have a number of staff working for them. And different groups do different things. Some people focus more on actually generating renewable energy. Some people focus maybe more on the energy efficiency side. And in an ideal world, we'd do both. That's the aim. So at the moment now we've got 10 staff. I was the first person to actually get paid for doing this, which is rather nice. And we've got 1,600 members. So those are people who have actually bought shares in the co-op. It's one member, one vote, regardless of how much you've invested. And about half of those people are from sort of the west of England area, and about the other half are from across the country.
Andy, is there a way we can find out who those 400 community groups are across the country?
Yes. There's an organisation called Community Energy England. Okay,
I'll look them up.
Yeah, I can put that in the chat later. So yeah, we're a member of that, and yeah, that's our sort of trade body. So in terms of assets, we've now got 15 rooftop solar schemes, got 2 solar farms, 2 standalone battery schemes, and 2 microgrids. So all that together gives us a portfolio of about 12 megawatts of battery and solar, and that powers the equivalent of 3,500 typical homes. And in terms of revenue, by far our biggest revenue earners are actually our solar farms. It's two solar farms, each of 4 megawatts. And that, so to fund all that, over the years, we've raised £15 million to do that. And I'd say just over half of that has come from community share and bond offers. And then the rest has come from commercial loans from banks, and also loans from social funders. So yeah, we're always looking to raise more money as we do more schemes. It's just a continual process, really, of developing more schemes, needing to find more money for it, and yeah, scaling up as we go. And then the other key thing is that, as I mentioned before, we're actually a community benefit society. So as well as providing a benefit to the community in terms of renewables and helping community buildings that we put solar on, helping those people to have like subsidized energy, we actually also use the revenue from our schemes to go back into community projects. So we've got our own community benefit fund, and groups can apply for funding for that to do their own sort of sustainability projects. So yeah, that's a really big part of what we do, and what lots of the community energy groups do. Oh, what's happening?
Amazing work, Andy. It's incredible. Brilliant.
Thank you. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the microgrids, because in some ways I'd say this is one of the things we're most proud of. So back in 2018, was it? A few years ago now, I and a few other people were getting really fed up of watching all the new build housing going up around sort of the Bristol area with not a solar panel in sight. And we just watching it, big housing developers get away with it because regulations were so poor. So we worked with some other organisations in the area to actually fund microgrids on new build housing estates. So we've done 2. There's one in Bristol here, and then there's one in Dorset. And what you have here is the houses have really good energy efficiency to start off with. They've got solar panels sort of maxed out across the roofs. They're using heat pumps and battery storage. But rather than have a battery in each house, you've got one big battery on site, and that stores the electricity that's generated across the site and share it between the houses. And if there's an excess of electricity, then it stores it for later use. And it actually can also export that electricity to the national grid and get revenues for doing that. And then in the times when, say, deepest, darkest winter, when there's not enough solar being generated from the panels, well, at that stage, we can actually import from the grid and store that again in the battery, and that powers the homes. So, yeah, we funded 2 of these, and we're really pleased because it was tricky to do, no doubt about it, in terms of regulations and tech and building during COVID and everything else. But we've done it now. The residents are in, and it really is showing what can be done. And the company that we've worked with on this from a technical point of view is now talking to lots of the big housing developers, and this, hopefully really is a way to go forward. And the residents, that basically there's a community, its own, each microgrid has its own co-op, and so that's who the residents are buying their energy from. So, and in the long term, if they want to, then we'll offer the residents the opportunity to actually take that co-op over themselves, sort of buy the whole project for themselves. So yeah, that's just it shows what community energy can do. And there's lots of groups across the country doing all sorts of interesting things like this, partly because they've been so strapped for cash. They've had to become really good at doing interesting things and innovating. And so, yeah, there's a huge amount of expertise and knowledge out there, which is really, really helpful. So that's just a bit of an overview of what I was saying there, the type of renewables being used, where the energy comes from, where it goes to, and how it makes money. And then just moving on briefly to the share offer, and I won't say a lot about it, but this is actually the 10th one that we've done. And they do tend to follow the same sort of pattern, in that once we've got this ever expanding portfolio or pipeline of projects, and when they get to the point that they're actually ready to go, then that's where we need to raise the funds for them. So we do another share offer. So this current one, we're looking to raise £1 million, and the minimum investment is £100, and individuals can invest up to £100,000. Also, organisations can invest. It's not just solely individuals who can invest. So on this particular one, we're projecting a 6% annual return. That does all obviously depend on everything going well as a business. That's what we're projecting at the moment. And the key thing to really, we're really keen to stress this, that yes, there is a financial return, but actually there's a social return as well. I mean, all those community benefit payments that we make, and there's an environmental return, obviously, in terms of carbon savings. So when people get 3 returns on their investments, our investors really are true impact investors. So yeah, I won't go into an awful lot more, but that link there, that takes us to the website. And then more specifically, we hold fairly regular webinars on the share offer. So the next one's taking place on the 25th of June at lunchtime. So if anybody wants to sign up for that through our website link there, you'd be very welcome.
I think that's a really good one to support, folks. Anyone who can network that, whether you can invest in it or not, please pass it on to other people. There's details in the big text out and email that we send out to people. But, this is what we should be getting behind, community energy rather than the big multinational. Support Andy and the crew. Bristol
Thank you.
Over.
And I just need to give you the normal risk warnings that investing in us isn't suitable for everyone. Money is at risk and returns are not guaranteed. Please do read the share offer document in full before applying. Yeah, but that's enough about share offers. What I really want to do is move on to the the bigger picture. So not just community energy, but the world energy situation and the UK energy situation. Because I said that community energy is a bit of a hidden gem, but I think also that the transition of the energy sector across the world is also something still rather hidden. People aren't aware of just how quickly things are changing. And that it's changing at a speed that even people who were almost like experts in the sector would never have expected, never predicted. And it's largely to do with technology cost curves, I suppose. It's like how mobile phones became really cheap once we had millions and millions of them, the same for TVs. Well, exactly the same thing has happened for solar panel costs, battery storage costs. It's beginning to happen now with heat pumps, EV charging, EV battery costs are coming down as well. And again, there's some, I think they say for every time you double the production capacity, I think the overall cost comes down by 20%. So when things are increasing at the scale they are, it does mean that over a few years the costs come down considerably, and that hasn't meant that literally over the last 15 years the cost of these materials have come down by 90%. And so it is now cheaper to actually build renewable projects out than it is fossil fuel ones. So if you're a big investor right now looking to decide where you're going to put your money, you wouldn't put it in a fossil fuel project unless you're getting subsidies for it, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. You'd be putting it into renewables. The nice thing is that the same thing is happening in terms of both cost reductions, but also technical advances in energy storage, which is crucial. There's lots of different types of energy storage, not just batteries. And also in the decarbonisation of heat, the technology is really moving on there, and also around transport. So all those areas that we need to sort of really decarbonise the whole sector, it's all moving on really, really well. But I'd say on the whole, the public is largely unaware of this transformation. And I'd also say that this isn't actually accidental. And I'll come on to that in a few more slides.
Yeah.
Just to home in onto the UK sector. So this graph here, to just do a few colours. So what you can see there in green, that's either wind, solar, other renewables. The red is coal. The light blue there is oil and gas. Orangey brown is nuclear. And we've got what's projected, so obviously past today, 2024. And then you've got this point here at 2020, just as a nice reference point. So if we go back to when we started, where were we, 2010, 2011, you can see how little green there was. That was the amount of renewables actually being generated. And you had a great big fat chunk of coal, lots of oil and gas, and a lot of nuclear. Well, quite a lot of nuclear. And then if you fast forward now to 2024, you can see coal is almost like completely dropped off the system, which nobody would have predicted a few years ago. Renewables have shot up, you can see gas is beginning to go down. Nuclear is dropping as well because they're taking so long to build out new plants, which personally I think is no bad thing. And so if you project for what's going to happen later on and what needs to happen, yes, we need to ramp up our renewables a lot more, but we know how to do that. And what we need to do is reduce those fossil fuels, the oil and gas, and do smart things like really get our energy efficiency sorted out and have like demand side response type stuff going. There's all sorts of other things that we can do apart from just actually generating more. We can actually cut down the amount we need. So the upshot is that, back in 2018, 2008, the UK got 76% of its electricity from fossil fuels. And then 15 years later, that has dropped to 33%, which is just staggering, really. So yeah, that's what's happening here. And it's not just here. I've got a few more stats later on that, in various other places in Europe, it's happening possibly even more quickly. And it's really happening across the world, actually. It's not just a few countries. And like I say, possibly because of money, really. Ultimately, it comes down to money. So just a little bit on the a couple of examples from other countries. So I don't know how many of you follow this website, Carbon Brief. They provide really, really good stats on the energy transition, really good analysis. So they reckon that in the next 5 years, the world will produce enough renewables to power the US and Canada. And normally, actually, when they have these predictions, it normally ends up being an under prediction. You normally end up doing more than that. And then the one below it is possibly even more surprising in that they think actually that in China, across the world, the global CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, have actually peaked because there's so many renewables coming on, and more fossil fuel plants coming off, we could have actually peaked. It's always difficult to know immediately. It will take a few years for that data to actually come through, but that is quite staggering because you wouldn't think it's happening. You hear people talking about China building out 80 coal plants a year and all this sort of stuff. It's just not the true picture. However, I've been very optimistic there. I know it's not all good. I mean, we can't avoid the horrible temperatures we're seeing around us at the moment. Unfortunately, that's not going to go away anytime soon. It's still likely to get worse before it gets better. And there are various reasons for why it's not all good. I said that I'm a long-standing member of Global Justice now. So in the past, I've worked on things like the fact that the tobacco lobby worked really hard to keep selling cigarettes to all sorts of people when they shouldn't be doing. And all those people now have moved across the fossil fuel lobby and they're doing just the same thing. And also the big multinational organizations that have always, well, in theory, been helping the developing world, but actually have put in place some quite difficult structures that have been really negative towards the developing world. Well, that's still happening at the moment as well. And to give you one example, you may know that at the last COP meeting, it has been agreed that we should start putting together loss and damage funds to developing countries so that they can fund that energy transition. But actually what's happened now, there is lobbying that rather than those be grants, they actually become loans. So it's pushing those countries into further debt. And that wasn't what was sort of agreed at that COP meeting, but that's the way people want it to go. And it just shows that, the global elite, this very small minority of people just want to keep things the way they are, and that's what we've got to fight, really. And in the UK, just the same, hopefully it's going to go. It does look like we're going to get a new government and some of this will go, but at the moment, the big oil companies, gas companies, if they develop new sites at the moment in the North Sea, they get a windfall tax of over 90%. It's just staggering. Over 90%. But again, this is just like the great unknown. The general public don't know about it because those in power don't want them to know.
Is there any kind of, equality on, the renewable industry getting any kind of tax breaks like that, Andy?
Not now. I mean, until when we first started, first few years, there was the feed-in tariff.
Yeah.
That's all gone now. So now it's all basically just market trading, really. You just got to make it work without any subsidy. Yeah, and there's, they hide these subsidies in so many different ways, but the IMF, they're reporting back in 2022 across the world, fossil fuel subsidies were $7 trillion. So it's huge, and it's still going on. And then the other thing is, I'd say, sacrifice zones. It's really actually difficult to work in this sector at the moment, because you do want the big oil or gas majors to move to renewables, and they are doing, but at the same time they're still doing awful stuff. So you've got BP here, who are doing like something called flaring their gas in Iraq, which is really bad. It causes huge health issues for people. And so this 21-year-old here, he died of cancer just a few days before he was due to actually go to the BP AGM and talk to the CEO about it. And again, BP don't tell you about this. You'll see the lovely adverts, but they don't tell you about all this sort of stuff. And so that's something we've got to try and raise awareness to the general public.
Andy, I think Art Groupie raised a hand there. Do you want to wait till you've finished for any questions, or do you want to take one now if it's relevant?
Probably at the end, if that's all right.
Okay, keep flowing. Cool.
Okay.
Great presentation.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, the public really do want to help. There's been this Britain Talks climate research has been run for quite a few years, and more, each year it becomes ever more clear that the public really are behind doing something on climate, and they want the politicians to go much further than they are, which is really, really good. And so, yeah, we want to help them out. So I think what we need to do is combine our talents. So like when we set up the Energy Co-op, you really need a group with real variety of talents, because some people are really good at social media, some people are good at finance, some people like admin. You need all those different people. And so it's really important to combine our talents, not just in community energy, but also in fighting off what I call the blockers, the vested interests who don't want the status quo to change. And building collaborations is really key. It's so hard to do it on your own, but when you're working together, it makes such a difference. Spreading the good news, I think, is really important, because we do need positivity. I mean, the one thing about community energy is that it does feel like one big family, and you're doing something positive, and that is energizing. You feel empowered, and it's, yeah, gets you up in the morning, really. And then the other thing I'd say, yeah, fight the blockers. We've got to make it clear what's happening. And then, of course, they always fight a dirty fight, and we don't tend to be that dirty, so it's always a bit tricky. But we have to find ways of providing resistance, and then provide alternatives to yeah, again, it's the status quo. We've got to change the mindset and the story, really, around why we can get to net zero and why we have to. So yeah, spreading the good news. This is a really good website that I recommend. It's called the Progress Playbook, and they have lots of stories and features on what's happening, not just around energy, but quite a lot of social sustainable development type stuff, but some really interesting stuff there around different countries, how far they've got in their progression towards sort of net zero. And you just get this nice, lovely worldwide feel for it. I'm nearly at the end now, but I just wanted to talk about this one. I was at a really good event a few weeks ago where they were talking about how we do fight back against like the big oil gas companies. And one person was saying that a great combination is that if you imagine at BP, they're having a board meeting discussing what they're going to do about a particular issue where they're being challenged. The most powerful thing that holds them to account is if at that time, not only is somebody bringing a lawsuit against them, and their own shareholders are bringing shareholder resolutions to the AGMs, but also you've got direct action happening outside their office. That combination is really powerful, and that really makes things change. So I thought, yeah, that sounds great, but I'm just going to add to it a little bit. I think if you add in community energy, it's even better, because community energy brings it closer to home. Like I say, I knew nothing about energy really before I got involved with this, but through getting involved, you do start to understand, and you talk to your neighbours about it, and neighbours are trusted sources of information on the whole. So it's a way to go into your own community and say, well, what could we be doing here? And in doing that, bring in that larger discussion about what's happening at a national level and how it all fits together. So yeah, it's very powerful. And like I say, it's the positivity around it. You don't have to feel you've got to go out and protest. It's a healthy activity which gives you some good mental health. So there we go. That's my final sentence. It empowers and inspires.
Beautiful. Absolutely fantastic, Andy. Really inspiring. For a long time, we've been saying in the Green Movement, we need to be, creating the worlds we want to see, as well as direct action against the ones we don't. But that's a really good combination you've ended up with there. That's fantastic. That's what we need. A combination of all of these tactics and long-term community energy building. Fantastic. Thank you. So, folks, if you've got any questions, any feedback, any comment, I think Art Groupie from Bristol, we've got a few Bristol fans in the house tonight. Art Groupie, over to you for question number one. Over.
Thank you so much. And to echo Phoenix there, what was it William Blake said? I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. And I think it's so important to reimagine the paradigm here. And that's what I was going to say to you, because I hear your comments saying they are changing. Now, I used to work on a drilling rig in the North Sea 20 years ago, 22 years ago. I'm way older than I look. And we thought we were changing to renewables then. Please don't be under any impression that there's intention for oil companies to change to renewables. And also, we need to remember that UK Export Finance is actually financing the largest LNG field in Mozambique, displacing the population, displacing any kind of biodiversity there. And their version of stakeholder engagement is employing a third party to tell people to fuck off. So please do not. I kind of pull people up when they say, yes, they are changing. No, it just says that on their website. They are absolutely not changing. I am astounded 20 years later, thinking that we were changing to renewables 20 years ago, that I am here right now today. So that's all I wanted to say. And I think it's ever so important, therefore, all of the rest of what you just said is we need to focus on what we can implement. Say what? And also, not just here, I've got the climate justice movement in countries like Nigeria, where no matter what government comes in, 86% of the country's economy is reliant on oil. So it's not going to change. But what we need to do there, and what we're trying to do, is empower people on the ground to actually implement their own, because they're the majority, they're the silent majority that we need to raise the voices of. We need to empower them to implement their own cheap, because a third of the population has no electricity and the rest are on generators. We need to empower people to here and there in the same similar ways to implement their own cheap renewable electricity. And there are schemes available out there where it's not a loan, where you can do this by paying it back through the electricity. So that's what we need to really focus on as a positive thing, because really trying to believe that an oil company is going to change, I can tell you from my personal life, it's not going to happen.
Absolute word. Thank you very much. Check that out, voice from the oil rigs to nowadays. Just before we come over to Paolo, if anyone else has got a question or comment, feedback, down the bottom there's a reactions little button. You press that to raise a hand. We can tell who's 1, 2, 3. It can be a comment, doesn't have to be a question. Whatever you want to feedback from the great presentation there from Andy. Paolo, lovely to have you along. Over to Paolo, then Elena.
Well, it's lovely to be here. I am inspired. I am feeling empowered. You will see me on Wednesday at your lunchtime doodah. So thank you. But what I want to say is, it's a bit, like you've been saying, Art Groupie, I've been hearing different stories. Just go way back to when they took the FIT feed-in tariff away, I thought I understood that they actually put it into reverse gear, so that people producing their own power had to pay something to the national grid. Was I dreaming at that point?
I'm not sure about that. We had a bloke on here, a solar for schools, which I'm really interested in, which seemed to work out very cost economically for the schools, and it wasn't a loan in any way, so that paid itself back. That's the kind of scheme I'm interested in. I'm not sure about what you just said, mind.
Yeah, I mean, with the solar for schools, I mean, their model is quite similar to ours in that you raise the money to fund the installation, and you have a sort of fairly high upfront capital cost, and then over the years, through selling the electricity back to the schools or the host building at a subsidized rate, and that allows you to sort of pay back your investors. So that's the model that we largely use. With the bigger schemes like the solar farms, we have the option of selling it. You can't sell it directly to the community, and so that's where we tend to typically sell it to other energy suppliers.
Yeah, so my comments are I'm mainly in my head, so I didn't make it clear, thinking about Nigeria where there's like zero money available. So that's slightly different to here, obviously. But thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Solar for Schools is a good link. We had them doing a webinar a month or two ago. Eleanor, lovely to see you. Over.
Hi there, hello. I love what you're saying and makes total sense about community energy being part of the fight back mix. But earlier you were referring to something about how people in the co-op are strapped for cash and have to resort to very inventive ideas, innovative ways of doing things. Could you say a bit more about that? And also about the buying back of the co-op, what you hoped that would achieve? Those two things would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, so well, when we started, the feed-in tariff system was in place, so that meant that if you install solar either as domestic on your own home or on a building somewhere, then the government gave you a certain amount of certain amount of money for every unit of electricity that you generated, and they actually also gave you a separate payment for domestics, assuming that this starts getting a bit complicated here, but assuming that you were going to use half of it on site and half of it would go back to you onto the grid, so they gave you an extra payment for that. Now all that has gone, so over the years the amount you got per unit that you generated went down and down and down, which made sense because the price of panels was coming down. But actually when the Cameron government got back in I think it was 2015, 16, they cut the feed-in tariffs almost like within a matter of months and brought the industry pretty much to a halt for a few years. And so quite a lot of the emerging community groups who were just about to do, say, their first scheme and were using the feed-in tariffs as the way of knowing that they've got a guaranteed income stream for the next, say, 20 years, that security blanket had gone. So it's much harder, say, to do a share offer because you can't be sure how much you're going to get for the electricity that you sell now. It depends on what the market's doing. So that was that one. The other one, I think that's probably referring to the microgrids when I was saying that we funded the kit that makes up the microgrid, so the solar panels and the batteries. And to do all that, there is actually what's called an energy services company, ESCO, which acts as like a mini energy company and sells the electricity on site to the residents at a subsidized price, and also takes on the responsibility that when it needs to buy electricity from the grid, when they say there's not enough solar being generated on site, then that company does all that on the residents' behalf. So at the moment, we are one of the sort of the part share owners of that group, that energy services company, and also some representatives of the residents are on there as well. But in a few years' time, this is all still quite new, so we've got to see how it all goes. But if in a few years' time it's clear that it does work in terms of the residents are getting cheaper energy than they would from a traditional supplier, then if they want to actually buy the whole energy services company from us, then we would do that. Whether most groups would want to do that, I don't know, because it's quite a big undertaking to take on, but that's what we'd like to do, so that you get to the point where it really is residents controlling their own energy, really.
Okay, does that help, Elena? I think that's the future we want to see. Yeah, okay. Over to Anura Davitachi. Very nice to see you, beaming in. You have to unmute, I think. Unmute.
Mute, here we are. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hi, Phoenix. Anuradha. I know my name's impossible.
Mhm.
You can get it wrong 20 times, I won't be offended. Andy, thank you so much. It was brilliant. And I've been a fan of community energy since the year dot. And I think it's brilliant. It's wonderful. I wondered, though, what you felt about supergrids, because they obviously aren't as well known and people arrive at them with a lot of suspicion, and also I think leftover baggage from Desertec and stuff like that, you know. But if you want to get past the, you know, it only, you know, the sun only shines in the daytime stuff, you know, don't you need to be able to, you know, really create a whole global system which really powers everybody the most efficient way, you know? But maybe that's wrong. What do you feel about it?
I think it really depends on the geography of each country. So, you know, if you take, say the Scandinavian countries where they've got an awful lot of hydro, they're pretty much self-sufficient without needing to import. The UK's obviously got great wind potential, so we could be energy independent.
Yeah.
And then you've got other countries, I suppose, who are landlocked, who don't have access to hydro. So it's I think it varies, but it does make sense that the more opportunities to share there are, the better. And it does amaze me, some of the undersea cabling, the length of these cables are going between continents.
Exactly.
And it does worry me from an energy security point of view, because it does feel like it's a bit easy to cut a cable and then that's a great big connection gone. So I still think it's really, if possible, the closer you can be doing renewables to where it's actually being used, the better, really. But like I say, it's not always possible. But the more we get down to that local level where, everybody's trying to do as much as they can on their own house and then sharing it locally as possible and building things properly from the ground up, the better, really.
The apart from what you said about the security, you know, if that assumes there'll be one cable. If there are several coming from different directions, it's like the internet. The whole point of the internet is that you're not as insecure as you were before with conventional. And if it can be like that, it can be to support things, support the local infrastructure, but also from many angles, then that would reduce that. And one of the things that politicians from the Global South have said to me is very often the insecurities appear to be on the surface, where the leaders of countries are saber rattling, you know, to make their points. But down below, the kind of lower parliamentarians and administrators know what a good thing this is to share electricity across borders. And so they're busy making arrangements to secure their countries. In fact, whatever the headlines say, you know, which was rather surprising and cheering thought.
Mm.
Mm.
Cool. Very good points, Raja. And, you know, we need to think local, act global, as they say, and beyond all borders. How are we going to deal with the creating climate resilient communities for community energy? Just a couple of things from my end. There was, and by all means, anyone else stick your hand up or comments, feedback. The quick one was, there's a film 2040, and it's about this guy talking to what his daughter would be, what it would be like for his daughter in 2040 if we worked on the solutions now. And even though people have been telling me about microgrids for a number of years, the first time I really got it visualized well. And the guy used an example of a Bangladesh village where they've got this kind of orange machine in the corner of the house, and each resident amongst these sort of like a hexagon of 6 different houses can decide whether to use their energy that day or pass it on to their neighbor for free or to sell it on to their neighbor, basically. And I thought that was a great way of explaining it, that, you know, each house has a solar panel and they can pass it on. But my actual question is something like this. For a long time, you know, we've got 28 of these climate emergency centres. They're all autonomous and independent, setting up around the country, more setting up as we speak. Is there a recipe? I mean, what we're about is trying to accelerate and scale up, having space for groups to work on solutions. You know, energy, renewable energy, community energy is a massive solution. Is there a recipe to help a new group in a climate emergency centre to help set up a community energy co-op or group or something like that that'll help them scale up? Simple steps, or, you know, a process that they can copy from Community Energy England or Bristol Energy Co-op, or who can they go to if they want to set up their own one, or promote solar panel on the simplest level, promote solar panels in their centre, or renewable energy displays, anything like that. How can we scale this up to more centres?
Yeah.
Over.
I think it's almost like two sides to it. One, almost like how things are right now, and two, how things hopefully will be in a few months' time, and hopefully we've got a new government in place. Because all the progressive parties are very supportive of community energy, and so we're pretty confident that we will get support, which will allow the sector to grow much more. And what it really needs is, it's really difficult in the early years when it's all just volunteer based to get something going, and that's exactly when you need some support, so that someone, say, working on it actually in a paid capacity, which gives you the continuity, and also the funds to cover, for example, the legal costs you have in, say, in doing due diligence on a project, or technical costs where you've got to pay for someone to do that, some expert who, you know, where the group doesn't have that expertise. So that, I think, will come with a new government, because it's something that the sector's been asking for a long time. So that's almost like phase 2. Phase 1 right now, I'd say, almost like, yeah, through Community Energy England, look around to see if there are existing groups in your area who are doing this already. If not, then, you know, find out, are there other, say, sustainability groups who you could maybe join with to do something. Talk to your local council, because they're often in the situation that, well, right now they're so cash strapped themselves, they don't have a lot of money, and they could actually welcome you putting solar on their buildings because they haven't got the money to do it themselves. But what they can also help with, almost like bringing people together, and anchor organisations are really important, you know. So if there's an existing community centre, talk to them, and I'd say get the word out early that you're looking to do something, and hold a meeting and see who comes forward, because it's amazing. You often get people coming with all sorts of skills that you need, that you maybe weren't even aware you needed, or know of somebody else who can do something. It's that sort of thing. So I spend quite a lot of time building up before you almost like start off trying to do a share offer or something, because it's that period that's so crucial to get your foundations right.
Okay, cool. I just looked up Community Energy England, and there is a campaign tools one. There's a email Duncan Law, I think it says, who's got
yeah.
The name is Duncan Law, Transition Brixton.
I think he is, yeah.
Okay, so we're in the last 10 minutes or so, guys. I'll be coming to Art Groupie, and then hold your hand up to any other feedbacks, questions, or anything you want to say. Art Groupie, Alice, over. Oh, you have to
Oh,
unmute.
you're on mute.
Yes, I'm always on my own little trip here, and I personally, and I believe the way that we're going to change things is not just my view. Is so I personally lost every time someone mentions the government or the new government. You know, everyone remembers here 1997, presumably, when we thought it was a brave new world, and it literally wasn't. I've given up. I've had a global rant in Extinction Rebellion about every time I hear the word election or march, because literally election, Tony Blair, march, stop the war, nothing. But system change, I believe, and this has got a point to it. I believe we absolutely must focus on empowering people to take actions themselves rather than focus on a macro scale or a large grid that can be sabotaged or used in any way. Because this is part of a wider point about system change, is the one thing we've never achieved in society is equivalency of expression for everybody in society. And this is part of that, empowering people at grassroots level. So I think it's actually very, very important to establish it on the community side rather than the governmental side.
Yeah, I don't disagree. You know, I mean, like I say, I came into this through Global Justice Now, which is all about justice in all sorts of ways, not just about energy. But you know, at the moment, we do need, you know, I'm quite cynical about government, but at the same time, it's been so shit the last 15 years. It can only get better. And we do know quite a lot of local politicians in Bristol, obviously, who are quite close to government or will be, and they are super supportive of community energy. So I have to have some confidence that between us, we can get to a better place, where maybe a year or two down the line, we can actually be having proper conversations about, let's stop talking about GDP and start talking about gross national happiness and that sort of thing.
Are you in touch with Ambition Lawrence Weston? I believe they're doing quite a good job.
Yeah, we know them very, very well. Yeah, they've been a big recipient of our community benefit payments.
Bristol is very progressive. It was Green Capital a few years ago. Paolo there, I think's got a question. Paolo.
Well, only just to agree with you, Art Goopy. You know, there's a lot of centralized projects, there's a lot of centralized power investment. Just thinking of nuclear alone. You know, what you're doing, I agree, is totally important. Making small scale, localized empowerment. So thank you very much for this initiative. That's what really wants.
Right, nice one, Paolo. And I suppose good facilitator skills. Anyone who hasn't spoken, anyone who'd like to make a comment, question, feedback, anything there? Luke, Chris, Jill.
You hear me?
I can. Something's coming through. Luke, yes, go ahead.
I was wondering what Bristol Energy was doing to take the strain off the agriculture problem at the moment, if there is anything in place like a co-op for city growing and allotments and indoor growing for food.
We're not doing anything on that directly. I mean, there are other organisations in Bristol who are already quite involved in that. There is a food network who again, we work quite closely with in terms of some of our community benefit goes towards them, but at the moment we're not really doing an indoor growing project ourselves. It's a bit beyond our capabilities at the moment.
Yeah, makes sense. I was just curious, that's all.
Coming over to Chris next, but Andy, someone just asked, can you put an email in the chat so that people can contact you later? I think Rada wanted that.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris.
Hi, Andy. Thank you for the talk. Yeah, just a quick question. Just curious. No hidden agenda. Just curious as to tech and stuff. Solar panels. I mean, where do you get them from? Do you buy them directly, or you have a supplier in the UK that you work with? Because I know through the network there are people that provide solar, and it's obviously nice to keep things in a community. So as I say, just curious. I'm not personally a supplier, so I have no personal vested interest. Just yeah.
Yeah, we don't get them locally. We work with local installers and usually go with what they recommend. But there is a really big elephant in the room here, is that on the vast majority of solar panels are coming from China.
Yeah.
You know, and there are definite links to sort of slave labor. So
I'm
we
not
are
here to
working.
trip you up or anything.
No,
There's no hidden.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I mean, I'm well aware that 99% of our consumables come from China. I don't think there's anything within 3 feet of me that isn't from there. So please.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, we genuinely are trying to sort this out. And there's actually a working group within Community Energy England on it. And so you can get panels that say are made elsewhere, but unfortunately they're about 3 times the price. And it's
sure.
so difficult when you're trying to make a project stack up financially when they're that much more expensive. It's a really tricky one.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think there's another question there from Eleanor. Do you want to ask it, or should I read out, Eleanor? You have to unmute if you want to ask it.
Hi there. Just before we go, I was just wondering, what does Bristol Energy need most of all right now this year? If it's possible to prioritize, what's the 1 or 2 main things?
This may not go down that well, but I would say it is a change of government. It really is. I'm really not against doing things at local level. You know, that's what I've spent my life doing. But I can remember when we had a decent country and we had a decent health service, and that does need infrastructure planning. It does need a government that does what it's supposed to do. But I've got huge amounts of interest in changing the way our finances work. If I wasn't doing energy, I'd be doing a lot more social re-engineering, I suppose. So yeah, but I just think right now we're so broken. We've just been lied to so much that we just have to change that first, and after that, some better things will flow.
So let's hope for big system change coming up soon, or big change of things. And also check out the Bristol Energy share offer. Please support a really good community energy group there and network it on. Links in the chat. Art Groupie.
Oh, on that previous point as well, I'll just add, read Noam Chomsky on why Jeremy Corbyn was ousted. So I think part of getting new government will also be system change. Anyway, moving on. Is this the last bit? Does anyone want to say anything else? Because I was going to talk about Restore Nature Now March, which is in London on Saturday, and there will be buses going from wherever you are, and you can check it out on the Restore Nature Now website. So Extinction Rebellion have been tasked with, because NGO is a bit shit, we've been tasked with doing basically everything, including the website and the art for it. I'll be coordinating air, which I thought was a joke job, but it seems not, on March. So hopefully check it out and get a bus, and hopefully you can get your travel expenses and whatnot, and hope to see you all there on Saturday.
Pop a link in the chat, Art Groupie, and hopefully in the wind section we'll have some windmills, and the sun section will have some sun power. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for an hour of your precious time, and thank you very much, Andy, co-founder of Bristol Energy Co-op. What an amazing success story, really. If you have a look at their website, you see the incredible work they've been doing for many years and spreading across many projects around the greater Bristol area and inspiring lots of groups. So we really hope that over the next years, months and decades, the Climate Emergency Centre Network can be promoting renewable energy and good, practice like this, community energy groups setting up in each of the different 28, 30 plus different centres all around the UK, and it growing and it's spreading. We really need grassroots community energy power. So over to Andy for the last word. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate. Keep up the good work. Any way we can help, let us know. Over to Andy. Last words. Thank you.
I'm not sure what else I've got to say, really. I think I've talked myself to death, really. So just say thanks for having me.
Brilliant. It'll be out on the YouTube soon.
I'm really happy every time I come to these meetings because someone is doing something somewhere, and it's brilliant.
We
Thanks a
aim
lot.
to promote solutions. If you want to put 1 to 3 words in the chat just about what you thought of tonight as a checkout or say anything, we're going to stop recording in a second. Anyone's welcome to stay around for 5-10 minutes to chat if they want or discuss anything. Going to stop the recording. Thank you so much. Big up Andy and the Bristol Energy Co-op and Chan and all the crew.
Yeah.